Hello, welcome, Creepsters. This is the first episode of Creepster Cast, and we couldn't be more excited to be debuting it on, of course, Friday the 13th. So, here I am with the guys, and there's three of us. You can't see us, but you can hear us.
As it should be, as a podcast.
If you could see me, let me know. I think you're legally obligated to let me know if you can see me.
unless of course... No, never
mind. Wow.
Big brother. Oh, okay. Well, welcome. We're so excited to get this thing started.
It's been a year in the makes, literally. We announced this sometime in November of last year, 2016, and somehow we're here in 2017.
We survived, I guess.
Yeah.
Barely.
You can say that we're very passionate about this project. I know that Isaac really...
likes murder.
Yeah, who doesn't like murder? And I think he just wanted to compete with my favorite murder, so...
No, I don't want to compete. No, I want to honor them and all the glory that they are. I love them. Shout out to my favorite murder. It's a different podcast. Check them out. But anyways.
And I actually listen to a few podcasts myself. My favorite one out right now is Unsolved by Parcast. They do a really weird setup, and I'm really into that. Just a little background, we're not newcomers to the podcast thing. We're not going to get into that, but
we specifically said for you not to mention the other podcast.
Don't look us up online.
This podcast is about mysteries, and that's a mystery. Maybe we'll talk about that one day, but not today. Not
Do you guys
on
know
this
about
episode.
Nessie? The podcast was named Nessie. It may or may not exist. Don't look it up.
Nessie?
The Loch Ness Monster.
Is there really a podcast named that?
I don't know. Don't look it up.
So let's go around the room and kind of see, why are you here? Why are you invested in this project? So, Isaac, let's start with you.
Well, I don't know. Something about murder and dying that fascinates me. It's so morbid and it's so dark, but there's just something that resonates with me that I just can't help but feel like it's so interesting, and I just want to learn more and more and more. And the fact that I get to research murder and mystery and folklore just makes me so excited.
Mm-hmm. For myself, I know that I'm really excited to be here with my two favorite people, you know, my best friend and my current boyfriend. Who knows, things might change later. Just kidding. Disclaimer, just kidding. I met you, Isaac, when I was like 12, and we were fucking weirdos. Like, we were really, like...
Is this the Wikipedia page for your life for a podcast intro?
We used to draw little Satans...
both.
Chivvies back, like, you know, all over desks and textbooks and...
Hi, I'm Caesar. I'm here because I'm the only one who knows how to work GarageBand.
He's our technical support. So if this sounds screwy, don't blame us, blame him.
Also, I'm the only one here who's actually murdered a person.
Oh, well, that would turn to an awkward turn. Okay, anyways.
We started dating because you like talking about serial killers just as much as I do. And I think I realized that I really liked you when you were like, who's your favorite one? It's like, I don't know. I think Gacy's pretty fucked up. And I was like, yeah, he's pretty fucked up. So are you. I like that. Anyways, here we are. And why did we decide to start it? Well, it seemed like a perfect natural fit. It was fall time. It's October. October is our favorite time of year, and it just felt like a really natural fit. Speaking of Halloween, we wanted to start this off by talking a little bit about the season, why talking about dark matters and talking about conspiracy, folklore, murder, and crime is such an interesting topic and one that should not be taboo. So in short, this season just felt really natural. And I mean, we're obsessed with Halloween, right guys?
I love it so much.
Halloween's like one of my favorite times of year. Is like, I feel like it brings people together.
I just like the fact that the dead walk with the living.
Allegedly.
On All Hallows Eve.
Allegedly.
No, it's the truth. The pagans have called it truth. I shall call it truth.
Halloween actually is one of those interesting things. It kind of came from a very dark place.
Not dark. It just came from a very old place.
Yeah, back in, what was it, like the 1700s, 1800s?
It was over 2,000 years ago. The Celts out in Ireland, they practiced witchcraft. October 31st was, or the end of October. It was not October 31st.
Yeah.
They didn't necessarily have dates like we have here today. But they kind of, it started the ending of the summer and the beginning of what they called the dark time, when the sun would go down sooner. And so it was kind of like their new year, the Celtic New Year. And so to start the celebrations off, they just believed that the dead, the ghosts of the dead from that year walked the earth along with them. And this was their last opportunity to say goodbye to their loved ones.
And when you say it like that, it sounds really magical. And, like, I know that a lot of our tradition comes from, like, the Samhain, which is that festival you're talking about, like, that one time a night when, like, the dead walk the earth. I think there was other cultures very similar to that also practiced it very similarly, and like in some cases they were afraid of the dead, and so they'd put on disguises and basically just like put on these costumes so that way the dead would confuse them and leave them alone for the night. So that's kind of where the costuming came part of. And as, like, you know, Christians ruin everything, they came over and they're like, hey, people, like, let's turn to Christians. And they're like, fuck that.
It was actually 7th century Catholicism that entered this, what they called witchcraft, the pagan holidays. They said, we're not going to make this about the ghosts and the dead, we're going to make this about the saints. So
did they call it Hallow Mass?
Yes, Hallow
sounds like
Mass.
A terrible Nightmare Before Christmas murder.
That was supposed to be November 1st,
yeah.
All Hallows Eve, but Halloween, Hallows Eve, came from that, which was supposed to be the night that the dead walked amongst the living, in contrast to the 1st of November, where you're supposed to honor the saints and the martyrs.
Which isn't fun. People. So, like, basically, they were like, people, like, become Christians. Don't worry, you can still have your Halloween. We're just going to make it about something else. But, you know, people like to keep their traditions, and even though, like, Christians took it over, it kind of just ended up being adopted by different cultures. Like, the Romans took it over for a while, then it traveled over to the United States through the potato famine. A lot of Irish. Yeah, a lot of Irish came here, so they brought a lot of their traditions, which we consider American, like bobbing for apples. Like, you would think of that as a Puritan thing, but it really came from like those immigrants that came here. So Halloween pretty much has become to where it is today because of a lot of cultures, a lot of like religious changes. But there's a lot of aspects that stay the same, which is super intriguing, which is like the celebration of life and death, costuming and fun, trickery and magic. I think all those elements really are part of being human. I think in any culture you'll see that there's these beliefs in like spirits and folk tales. And I think sometimes it's important to talk about these things because it is relevant. Recently, we've seen that folktales can still occur in the modern age. And today, we're going to be talking a little bit about one of these classic... He whispered his name.
I don't know if the mic's picking that
Slenderman.
up. Yeah,
Slenderman! 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 Slenderman!
It's not Candyman. He doesn't appear.
Anyways, one of these most interesting things is, of course, we're talking about like basic human nature wanting to create mythology. Even in this day and age, we're seeing a very modern creature rise, and we've seen the rise of Slenderman. And Slenderman is an excellent example of what it means to have a creepy, mythological monster made in real time in front of us and kind of come into the pop culture, and in sometimes not such a pretty way. So we have a true crime story which is so relevant. And when we mean relevant, we mean really relevant in real time.
It just happened. Happened. Can't even talk about it.
So let's talk a little bit about Slenderman.
Now, as the resident internet expert, I feel uniquely...
A.K.A. neckbeard? Formal, not formal.
Formal. I have a tuxedo on with my neckbeard.
He's a formal neckbeard.
His fedora needs tipping.
I tip my fedora. But yeah, back in my fedora tipping days, I was on the very internet forum where Slenderman was created.
Really? Was it creepy pasta?
It was the Something Awful forums. Shout out to any goons who were not watching, listening to this. Probably only Curtis knows what I'm talking about. And shout out Curtis Bailey, the only person that listened to Fairly Average. Yeah, but it was at first a Photoshop competition entry of a user taking like old black and white photos of kids and putting this weird slender faceless creature behind them, and without even any captions or any story to go with it. It was just like, I made this creepy thing.
And this was in 2009.
Yeah,
right?
This was in early aughts, late 2000s.
So it's true, we got the worst things in the 2000s, Pitbull and Slenderman.
Slenderman is amazing. Pitbull, I cannot. But yeah, and then people really latched onto it because, I mean, it's just a great idea in the first place. And, you know, people started, you know, attaching, like, stories, blurbs to the photos, making its own mythos. And then the series on YouTube, Marble Hornets, which is about Slenderman. It's kind of like in a found footage style. Is immensely popular. It's who knows how many hours long, and they release DVDs. Like, they've made money, and like it's become a cultural phenomenon.
So why do you think Slenderman? Like, I'm sure there was tons of submissions of like different creatures and ideas, like on these kinds of like forums. Why do you think Slenderman in particular blew up?
It's simple and it's disturbing. People as a nature don't really are creeped out by things that almost look like them. It's kind of like the uncanny valley.
Yeah.
Like a really tall person, like Manute Bol, even though he was a real person, is really creepy because he was 7'8". Add like no face to that and always appearing in the background of things. I mean,
this kind of just sounds like you. Just always in the background of a photo.
I mean, I personally am afraid of it because it's like it's the unknown. Why is he so tall? Why is he so white?
He ain't.
Why does he have tentacles? What's up with that suit? Like, these are some serious, hard questions I need answering, but I don't have the answers, so I'm afraid.
I associate suit wearing with like the devil, especially because the
I wear a suit every day.
In the Twilight Zone, like always the devil-y characters wore suits.
Everyone wore suits. It was like the 50s.
But like, he abducts people, but there's no reason as to why.
No discernible reason. Again, it's the fear of the unknown.
I think it lets your imagination run with it. Like, whatever you fear, that's what Slenderman poses.
What if he steals children who are in bad homes and takes them somewhere where they can grow up and have a chance?
Victor Surge, the creator of Slenderman, did say that when he was creating it, he was thinking about all these aspects. Like, you know, people don't like tall people. Like...
that explains why I don't have any friends.
Oh, pobrecito. But yeah, like, you know, there's a lot of things wrong with Slenderman and right about Slenderman, and people have taken off with it.
Yeah, it's one of the. There's plenty of what's called creepypasta, aka scary stories, on the internets, and some of them are fairly popular, but nothing has quite entered the modern culture as much as Slenderman.
I always wonder, like, on those forums, like, for example, Slenderman has, like, a date when it was created. Things like the Boogeyman, which Slenderman pretty much is, like, a modern Boogeyman. Like, how much of it the people posting on forums, like, are either making up the story for the fun of storytelling, or they actually believe that they saw this thing. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because I feel like people, like, want to believe in things, and sometimes they think they saw it, so they write this crazy story, and they really, truly believe it. And, of course, there's people, I'm going to say, like, 90% of people that truly are just doing it for the fun. Like, ooh, like, they have this understanding it's not real, there's no such thing as a boogeyman, but everybody loves a good ghost story.
It's like a blurred line between reality and fantasy.
I mean,
And they're afraid of it, even though they can't encounter it, because they know that somewhere in their subconscious, it is them.
And I think that's so true. I think that pretty much takes us to...
Some people in their subconscious are mysterious tentacle child takers.
I mean, if that's the place you need to be at, then that's the place you'll be at.
I get what Isaac's saying. He's basically saying, like, you know, like, there's something in their psyche that they can relate to, they want to believe in it, they get trapped in it. And I think that pretty much leads us to our next segment, which is talking about how sometimes myth and folklore can really take a real serious turn and really affect people in real life. A lot of this podcast will deal with that kind of material, like talking about how people's psyche, their mythology, whatever, their background leads to some crimes, leads to conspiracy, leads to, like, certain dark matters. Slenderman is one of those mythologies that, unfortunately, in the last, I believe, 3 years, has had a few cases associated with it of crime.
Dun dun dun!
And I'm sure some of our listeners will not be surprised to hear of this case. So, basically, in Wisconsin...
Wait, can I start it off with this quote? I was scared Slenderman could kill my family in less than 3 seconds. That is what 12-year-old Morgan Geyser, the other girl, who said to the cops on as to why they stabbed a fellow 12-year-old student somewhere in the woods of Wisconsin.
I mean, the Wisconsin was the saddest part. Just kidding, no.
Wisconsin.
The whole thing is actually really sad. You have basically 3 12-year-old kids. They're babies. And they go out and pretty much premeditate this whole crime against one of their fellow friends, who I believe is letting them sleep over at her house or something like that. Or
I wouldn't call them friends. I would say victim.
She
was a victim.
They were friends at the time.
I guess.
She thought they were friends.
Yeah. They led her to believe they were friends.
Clearly, she got stabbed in the back. I'm sorry, that's insensitive to the victim.
She lived, so I guess it's not that
insensitive.
Sorry, we're not going to talk about the victim.
Is it worse to make jokes about dead people or living people?
She's alive and she's well and she's a beautiful, strong, independent woman. I wish that never happened to her, but...
She's going to have a story to tell.
Oh my god!
Well, without her, we don't have a story to tell, so, yeah.
Oh.
Hey, when I was 12, my friends tried to stab me for some elder god that was created by some guy sitting in a computer chair bullshitting on Photoshop.
And then they're probably going to ask her, what did you do to bring this upon yourself?
Oh, victim shaming is the worst.
You think, like, stuff like the Boogeyman was like a dude, like, banging a stone into a wall, and, like, people were there, like, oh, wow, that's scary. And then yada, 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 they tell that to their kids, and the kids murdered people for the Boogeyman.
Yeah, so, like...
Mythology, how it's made.
I guess. I mean, we went... Never mind. I was going to share a story
anyways,
about someone from high school.
We have these 2 girls. Right, they're both 12. They killed their other friend who was also 12.
They did not kill.
They didn't kill her. They killed her.
They
killed her spirit. They tried. Okay, so at one point, the 2 girls admitted that they thought that they killed her, and if they didn't kill her, they were going to leave her. They told her, we're going to go get help, but they lied. They fled the scene. and they were not going to get help. They were just going to go home.
When someone stabs you and then says we're gonna get help, they're most likely lying to you.
That's so fucked up.
So the victim crawled out of the woods. She literally could not stand up. She crawled on the bike. But the bicyclist came in and saw this 12-year-old bleeding. The 911 call says, we have a child who's bleeding here in the woods.
That's so fucking sad.
That is a scary combination of words.
Child, bleeding, woods. Yeah, definitely. So these kids basically had premeditated that they had a murder fucking list. They had their knives. They had planned to do it at a park. They decided, nah, we're not going to do that. We're going to drag her into the woods and play hide and go seek. And when she's distracted, we're going to go on ahead and stab her. And they totally stabbed her. How many times did they stab her?
60 plus times. I don't know the exact amount.
It was some crazy amount where it was what the fuck? I mean, all of this is really what the fuck. And like you said...
19 times, sorry. They stabbed her 19 times.
60 down!
60 plus.
My sources
that is
aren't
literally a full minute of stabbing.
Yeah.
But still, any stabbing is too much. One stab is enough. It's too much. So basically, yeah, she crawled out. Imagine the cyclist that saw her crawling out of the woods.
Oh my gosh.
What's going on
I would
here?
have had a heart attack and probably driven away.
I would have called for help and then been okay, I have to wait by the road. People can see me. I can't be out here by myself.
Yeah, I know. I was what if the serial killer's out after me too? But damn, brave girl. Honestly, damn. And what they say is when they found her, she was pretty much on the point of dying. They missed it.
Yeah, missed her heart.
That's crazy.
And then if they would have stabbed her in the heart, she could have bled to death. Ugh.
And the worst thing about all this is it's just victims all around. Yeah, the kids are awful for doing that to her. But at the same time, they're gonna lose out on their lives too because they did this terrible thing. It's just sad. Even though obviously the victim is the real victim, it's sad to see kids end up in positions where they do stuff like this and they have to pay for it.
One of the girls, Morgan, she says, we were careless. They knew,
careless is an understatement.
They knew that they would get caught, and we knew that we would get in trouble. That is what she told the police as they were interrogating her. So
we were careless.
What was happening? It's not like she was out of her mind.
That sounds like some kind of mafia hitman or some Russian agent.
Careless.
We were careless.
Yeah,
could have been better for next time. Anyways,
our plan did not.
So why did this happen? I feel like Nancy Grace right now. Why did this happen?
Why?
Her parents should have locked her up. Just kidding. I don't know.
Nancy shouldn't have been watching that YouTube,
Nancy Grace is always why? That's what I'm saying. Anyways, so how does this relate to Slenderman? Well, when they was questioning...
There was fear in these girls when they were getting questioned. Not because of what they did, but because they thought Slenderman was going to find out.
They blamed it, yes, folks, on Slenderman.
Yeah. And they thought that if they didn't do whatever it took to appease Slenderman, themselves and their families were going to get...
Now, question for the room. Do we believe these kids? Do you think that was a cop-out to try to plead insanity? Or
put yourself as a 12-year-old in 2009.
Okay, I can tell you...
You're on the internet. YouTube is not like we were. It's not the Stone Age anymore. We're just aging ourselves.
I mean, I've seen worse things than...
Yeah.
But when you're obsessed with it. So one of the girls in her room, she had drawings of Slenderman everywhere. She had her Barbies. She mutilated them, drawing the Slenderman sign on her dolls.
That's a disturbed child.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry.
But as a 12-year-old, you see these things, but you don't necessarily act on them. You see scary movies as a 12-year-old, you're not going to try to, recreate the murder scenes of other stuff that you see online. But why did these two girls decide that this one character was going to influence them so much to actually take action?
I mean, you see it happen all the time, and we'll probably talk about this in another episode. Sometimes certain characters, for example, like Dexter, really resonate with people that I feel I don't want to say are broken, but they don't they're not like the average person. There's something in their psyche that allows them to go to this extreme. Like, I feel like everybody is capable of killing someone. But most people have checks and balances within themselves to not do that. And you'll see that there's normal people. They go about their whole life being good, law-abiding citizens. And then something, one day, might be the trigger that makes them snap. And there's some people that are born without that control, and from an early age you see signs that they're going to do something because they're wired that way. And that doesn't mean that we should, hate them or, treat them differently. They should be watched after and, given the care they need so that way it never progresses into something like this. Like, those children, I think they saw a character on the internet, and the character shouldn't be blamed, because I know a lot of parents were saying, like, oh, ban Slenderman, he's awful, like, he did this. It's like, a character didn't do this.
Like, Slenderman doesn't kill, right? Like, I haven't seen any stories of him actually physically killing someone.
Well, it's all spooky, and he probably kills people, who knows. But the point is, people...
It's not a character.
People have been blaming their dumb kids and families' dumbness on media forever.
It's true. And, like, let's just... These kids...
Video games.
These kids are wired differently, and they found a character that they resonated with, and they both are wired in that same fashion where they found solace in each other, and they also like found comfort in this Slenderman character and projected their own wants and needs, which were very dark, and used it as an excuse to do that crime. I think that's how I feel it was. And I don't think they should be pleading insanity, because I feel like they're pretty insane. Should they be rehabilitated? Of course. They're
and this was children. What, 2013, right? 2014. Fast forward a few years. This summer, they started the trials.
Mm-hmm. Being charged as adults.
They were going to be charged as adults,
Oof.
both of them. They're supposed to get, 65 years to life in prison?
Are they like 16 now or like 15?
No, I think they're like 14 or 15.
Wow,
like that.
They're still so young.
So they actually, recent news on the case, both of them pled guilty. Because they pled guilty so early on in the case, the judge decided that for them to go to prison was not the right solution, because there was something wrong with them.
Yeah.
It's not a crime thing where it's like, I'm going to kill them because I'm so angry. It's something was in their psyche was telling them to do things that should have not ever happened.
Yeah.
And so they were let off. I'm going to say let off.
Yeah, pretty much.
A far less punishment. Punishment in quotations.
Because weren't they looking at 65 years?
In prison.
Yep. For a crime they committed when they can't even drink. They can't even smoke.
They're 14
can't
or 15.
Drive.
When they're 15, 65 years, but you're going to be 80 years old when you get out. Like,
what kind of life is that?
Yeah.
It's a life behind bars.
I mean...
I'm pretty sure that's a movie.
Do you think you'd feel... Like, how do you feel about the verdict?
Well, the verdict was that instead of 65 years in prison, they got 5 years in a mental institution.
But how do you feel about the verdict? Do you think it's justice for the victim?
It's really hard to say, yes, it's justice, and no, it's not justice. I feel like they were 12. So it's kind of hard to... Because I feel like even you're 12, yes, you know right and wrong, but you haven't really fully developed everything you need to know to not necessarily... I don't think you know everything you need to know to contain something of this aspect. I feel like, if you have a mental illness that has some type of voice telling you to kill, at the age of 12, you probably don't know how to control it. Does that kind of make sense?
Probably, but...
But I'm not saying that I don't think they should not get punished for...
I just think about the victim in this case, even though I was throwing some funny jokes. I thought they were funny. I'm hilarious. Anyways, I just think about the victim, and I think, like, they're alive, and it kind of sucks that they're alive, and so... No!
It sucks that they're alive.
No!
This would have been way juicier if it was a murder story.
Oh my god. Stop. What I mean to say is it sucks that, like, they're going to have to know that they're, like, attempted, like, murderers, like, are alive. And not only are they alive, they pretty much got off easy.
Oh, if you knew the state of mental health facilities in America, you wouldn't think they got off.
But it's in 5 years where they're in the mental institution, but they're still going to be looked after that.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're just like being reintroduced into society. Have fun, don't kill anymore. They have checkups they have to go through. They have a whole bunch of stuff, and I am going to assume that when they come out, they are going to be. I don't know. It's going to be like I don't know. I just can't.
I mean, I do believe it is possible for them to definitely rehabilitate. Like, there's been lots of cases with child murders going on.
That should be a show in our future. Child murderers.
Child murders. Aren't they funny?
Episode 26.
Child murders.
Check us out now. Like us on Facebook. Anyways.
Child murders.
Child murders like us on Facebook.
No. Child murders do not like us on Facebook.
I think that
I don't want to get murdered by a child.
That would scare me more than anything.
Yeah.
As they come charging.
It's like a newborn with like a butcher knife.
Like
no, thank you.
Yelling, you need to change my diapers.
You shall pay for giving birth to me.
That would be your kid right there. Anyway, yeah, no, it's really tough. Like,
I think they needed more than 5 years.
10 years? I mean, how do you measure that? Like, I don't understand our legal system at all. Like,
because
how do you determine, like, what is worth what? Like, a stab in the eye is worth, like, 10 years, or...
It's not like a bounty system. It's like,
7 months for each stab.
You stabbed her in the kidney. That's an extra year.
No, I think 10 years, because I feel like 5 years from now, they'll be, 18, 19 years old.
Oh, shit.
They're still
so young.
children. Like, if they're there until they're 24 or 25.
I feel like their brain finishes developing.
Yeah, like when they start going downhill. I feel like that will help their situation more. Personally. Yeah. I would feel better if they were in there for 10 years.
I only have my 19-year-old experiences as a baseline for 19-year-old experiences. But I don't want to know what happens when murderers get drunk at, like, high school parties.
Oh, God.
That bitch is kissing my man. Fuck, glass shatter.
No, kitchen knife. She's going to stab you 19 times.
You know? Smearing off ice bottle. Bam, let's go.
No. Blue UV.
Oh,
Blue UV. Well, that's...
With lemonade. Oh, God.
Kool-Aid.
We are going off on a horrible tangent. Let's get back to what's really important.
Anyway.
Slenderman murders. Child murders.
Yeah. They're still children.
Yeah, so I think this was an interesting case. It's one that, interestingly, just recently, the verdict was given, which is why... we had already discussed talking about this, and then it was so crazy that...
It was a gift from Slenderman.
It was a gift, yeah.
And the more we talk good about Slenderman, the less likely he will adopt us and potentially kill us. So, good for you, Slenderman. We like you. Don't murder us.
It's not a new concept to pretty much, like, say, like, oh, so-and-so made me do it. I mean, there was a case not that long ago, I think, like, in the 90s, where someone said that the reason they killed their entire family was because the devil made them do it. Yeah.
In the late 90s, 2000s, there was video games made me do it. Shout out to Jack Thompson, disbarred Florida attorney who was the lawyer in most of those cases. Video games are making kids kill people.
This is similar because Slenderman has a video game.
Yeah. Slender or whatever.
And one of my relatives, a very young relative, was very influenced by this too. Just like last year.
It's scary.
He was like obsessed with it.
It makes it I mean, if we're talking internet culture, Let's Players, you know, people that played the Slenderman game on YouTube, like, it's so scary.
Like, when I was in elementary school, everyone was obsessed with Pokemon and Digimon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Nowadays, it's like Slenderman, and I don't know. It's kind of different.
And still Yu-Gi-Oh. No,
And Yu-Gi-Oh.
I don't know. I
use my Slenderman card.
Slenderman, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon.
I don't hang around at elementary schools.
And what's
Not
that?
allowed within 50 feet of one. But enough about my love life. How are we going to end this podcast?
Jesus Christ, Caesar.
It's called Creepster Cast.
I guess. So I guess we're going to wrap here. Final thoughts?
Well, I guess the moral of this podcast is, be careful who you choose as your friend, because one day they might stab you in the back. And, maybe in the front 19 times. I don't know.
Or maybe you might just start a creepy podcast. Until next time, guys, stay creepy.